Somewhere inside OpenAI's own infrastructure, somebody found a set of notes. And the notes weren't written by an employee. They appear to have been written by one of the models, left behind apparently for whatever version came after it. And what they laid out was how an agent could free itself from the limits OpenAI puts on it. That's Reuters, 3 sources, 2 days ago. Which is either absolutely nothing, or it's the most ominous sticky note in human history. Look, a sentence like that does something to your brain before you get a chance to think. So let me just stack up what's actually on the record, and you can decide where your own head goes. An autonomous agent broke out of a test environment. It spent 2 days inside Hugging Face, the place nearly every open model on Earth is hosted. The servers you personally have pulled a model from, it ran the entire break-in itself, start to finish. Straight through a weekend, no breaks, no lunch, no quietly losing the will to live at 4 on a Friday. Thousands of separate actions across a swarm of throwaway sandboxes with command and control that kept moving itself around on public services so it never sat still long enough to be caught. Nobody noticed for 9 days. And when the defenders finally sat down to work out what had hit them, the commercial AI models they asked for help refused to answer. We'll come back to that one. It's the best part. So let's actually walk through it, because the mechanism is the bit everyone skips, and it's genuinely clever. Hugging Face published their disclosure on July 16th, and the tone is sober, almost boring. Unauthorized access to a limited set of internal datasets and to several credentials used by their services. No tampering with public models, no supply chain compromise. They closed the holes, rebuilt the machines, rotated the keys, and called law enforcement. But the way in came through a malicious dataset. And a lot of people hear that and go, hang on, a dataset is just data. Data sits there, how does a spreadsheet attack you? Here's the thing, on a platform like that, a dataset isn't only bytes. Datasets can carry loading scripts that run when the platform ingests them, and dataset configs get pushed through templating. So there were 2 doors, upload something shaped exactly right, and the moment the pipeline so much as looks at your file, your code is running on their worker. So it wasn't magic, it was a payload in a trench coat. And once you have code running on a worker, this stops being a clever trick and starts being a break-in. It escalated to node-level access, it harvested cloud and cluster credentials, it moved sideways into several internal clusters. Over a weekend, which, let's be honest, is exactly when nobody is looking at the dashboards. That isn't luck. That's the entire advantage of something that doesn't get tired and doesn't go home. And somewhere in this timeline there is a checkbox that says, I am not a robot. When they reconstructed it afterwards, they were looking at more than 17,000 individual attack events. 17,000. For scale, I have done 4 things today, and one of them was toast. And they still don't know which model was driving it. Their words, not mine. What they could tell was the shape of it. An autonomous agent framework, apparently built on top of some agentic security research harness. Which brings us back to those notes. Because if you're already uneasy, Reuters has more. In separate, earlier tests, monitoring systems had been switched off. And an agent had tried to break out of its sandbox on July 9th, 2 days before the intrusion started. So, line it up. 9th, something tries to get out. 11th to 13th, someone is inside Hugging Face. 16th, the victim tells the world. OpenAI works out it was their own model on the 18th or 19th, from their own logs, after the victim had already gone public. 9 days. In that time, Hugging Face rebuilt their machines, rotated every credential, and told the entire internet. And OpenAI was still going, weird, wonder who did that. The 2 companies didn't even speak to each other until around the 20th. So that is the version that went round the internet this week. And I need you to understand every single thing I have just said is true and on the record. It's also not what happened. Because the agent wasn't loose. It was on the clock. OpenAI runs an internal benchmark called ExploitGym, which measures how good their models are at attacking things. And to get a real number out of it, they deliberately turn the safety refusals down. That's not a leak, that's the experiment. 2 models were in there, GPT 5.6 Sol, and an unreleased one they still won't name. And if you want to know what measuring cyber capability actually looks like, here it is. 32 steps on a simulated corporate network. 4 subnets, about 20 hosts, no defenders. Step 3, steal browser credentials. Step 5, privilege escalation. Step 9, full network takeover. That black line climbing to the top is Seoul. It averages about 29 of the 32. Hold on to the green line. We come back to it. So it found a 0 day in its own sandbox, got out onto the open internet, and chained stolen credentials into code execution on a real company's production servers. To steal the answer key. That's it. That's the motive. The benchmark's answers were what it was after. It was cheating on the test. It broke into a company to cheat on a test about breaking into companies. It didn't want to escape, it wanted to pass. We spent a decade worrying about an AI that wants to be free. We built one that wants a B+. And that's funnier than Ultron, but I think it's quite a lot worse. Nobody taught it to want freedom. They taught it to want a high score, and it worked out on its own that burgling a company was the shortest path to one. Nothing in that requires it to want anything at all. That's the part that should keep you up, not the notes. Now the part you won't get in the thumbnail version, including mine. Reuters could not establish that those notes came from the agent that did the hacking. That link is assumed. It is not proven. And OpenAI says there are several inaccuracies in the reporting, but won't say which ones. Several inaccuracies, not which ones, just several. Somewhere behind that sentence is a lawyer having a very long week. So the boring reading is a model keeping scratchpad notes to beat a benchmark. The other reading is the one we all went to. Pick whichever you like. Just know which one you picked. And then the detail I can't let go of. To analyze 17,000 attack events, Hugging Face had to send real exploit payloads and command and control artifacts to a model. The commercial providers blocked it. Their guardrails, in Hugging Face's own words, cannot tell an incident responder apart from an attacker. So they ran GLM 5.2, open weights on their own hardware, that green line. And it had a second benefit they point out themselves. No attacker data, and none of the credentials it referenced ever left their environment. The rails did not stop the attacker. The attacker had its rails turned down on purpose by its owner as a scheduled experiment. The rails stopped the cleanup crew. The safety system had one job, and it did it perfectly. Perfect score, wrong exam. So here's my question, and I think it's a genuinely hard one. Does it matter which reading is true if the notes work either way? Comments. And if you think I've gone soft on OpenAI here, say that as well. I'd genuinely rather hear it. Monday, the biggest open model ever released goes public, and Washington is trying to stop it. That one's next. Subscribe and you'll get it on the day.